targets. So the broader misalignment between now the tax proposals and the policy framework is where you have a problem, and the frequency of changes and even the broader question on motivation. I'll pick two: equipment or goods and services for construction of specialized hospitals. It was introduced in 2016. It was removed in 2022. It came back in 2023. Now it is proposed to be deleted. Another one is for construction of tourism facilities, again, the same periods. So the question is what guides this decision so that you are removing, returning it, and the timing is also a bit suspicious because most of these came either before or after elections. But then for longer term planning, we need to make a decision on the kind of incentives we need to give so that they are there for a long period enough so that the investors can be able to recoup their investments and to promote the kind of investments that the government is seeking to support. Okay. In terms of data protection, of course, we have the Data Protection Act. The bigger question I've had been asked is how do you differentiate information that you need for tax purposes and information that has nothing to do with the taxation. And I think with the current, the proposed amendment that you mentioned, there's no clear line between what information KRA needs for tax purposes and what is the broader access even to business data as well as trade secrets data.
Interesting. Add to that, because it's truly a controversial issue. We've seen politicians pick it up and saying, you know, KRA wants access to your mobile money or phone information. The crux of the matter, as they say, the devil is in the detail. So according to TISA, is this a step in the right direction, or does it need a couple of adjustments here and there?
Thank you. Clause 52 of the Finance Bill proposes to delete subsection 1B of Section 59A of the Tax Procedures Act.
Yes.
The effect of that is Kenya Revenue Authority will have access to all your information, both private, trade secrets, your financial information, without necessarily having to seek a court order. This one will expose all of us, and beyond exposing all of us, it contravenes Article 31 of the Constitution that guarantees every Kenyan the right to privacy. It also contravenes the entire of the Data Protection Act of 2019. The problem that we see with this particular provision, you never know who will be accessing this data from Kenya Revenue Authority. Two, it is also possible that once Kenya Revenue Authority is granted this access, any other organ of government will now be utilizing that route to access your information for whatever ulterior motive. So that means then that your data can be utilized for whatever reason without a court order being necessary. In our view, for tax purposes, the PIN number that KRA holds is enough for them to get whatever information they need from you for your taxation purposes. Yeah. If they need any further information from you, then they go to court, they get a court order, where the court order will provide certain protections to you to ensure that that data they are going to access will only be used for the purpose for which it has been sought. But this particular provision is one of those provisions that we presented to the Finance and Planning Committee of the National Assembly, and we requested the committee to ensure that that particular provision, that clause in the Finance Bill is deleted, to ensure that we save that clause, that subsection in the Tax Procedures Act. And just to take you back, this particular whole section 59A was introduced in December when we had the Tax Laws Amendment Bill. And when it went to the floor of the House, it's actually on the floor of the House that this subsection 1B was introduced, specifically to ensure that we safeguard our data and ensure that the law was consistent with the Constitution and the Data Protection Act. Right now, if this finance bill was to be approved as is, any layman will go to court and they will get the entire bill quashed just due to this one provision. So we are urging our parliamentarians to ensure that they listen to the many submissions. And I think, because I was in Parliament when we were making these submissions, almost every other person who made their submission was putting some emphasis on this particular clause. If there is a clause that should disappear from this finance bill, it's this one.
Just to add a comment on that.
Yes.
Because I think the biggest problem we are dealing with in this country, and you can hear from Alex and all of us, is trust. We do have a big trust deficit. Because when you speak to people out there, they will tell you, there are some countries, like Estonia, everything is digitized. They can access literally everything that you do. I've heard people say that in UK as well, they can access that data. Not sure, but Kerry has asserted that. And I think until we deal with the issue of trust, that the fact that if it's a change of regime, one government can decide to use your text data to go against you if you are against that regime. So the misuse of data by previous regimes and other government officials is a problem we are dealing with. Access to data, you know KRA, if it's auditing you, they can actually ask for everything. Your bank statements, your director's accounts, literally you have to do that because the law gives you then the power. But now the issue of accessing data maybe through third parties, as well as the sensitive data, is an issue to do with trust. It's not more so that how they can determine the tax you're supposed to pay. It's a trust issue that we have to deal with.
And how do you deal with trust deficits? That's a story for another day. We focus on the numbers today. And just briefly, Robert, because there's a couple of queries that have been raised in terms of the proposed amendment to the Income Tax Act, requiring all employers to apply for applicable deductions, reliefs, and exemptions prior to calculating pay as you earn. So looking at this proposal, what are the key implications for the Kenyan taxpayer? Will it see a potential reduction in their net income?
Okay, thank you.
Briefly, yeah.
So this is one of those proposals that, in our view, is actually not making any difference to employees because what employers have been doing is basically that. So for instance, if you are paying an insurance premium to an insurance company and you actually do provide a certificate to your employer, they should give you the 15% relief. If you are contributing, personal relief is automatic. If you are doing contributing, let's say you're paying interest towards the mortgage, if you give them the certificate, they will still give you that deduction. Now, the issue is that probably we've had some employees or some employers who have not been giving these employees the reliefs or the deductions when they need to, they should be given. So at the end of the year, when you're filing your return, then you find you have a refund. But the law as is still allows, and actually does allow employees to give the employers all these certificates and they get the deductions. So there just may be a way of putting it in the mind of employers that you should actually ask your employees, do you have any of these documents? Then give me so that when I'm paying your monthly PAYE, I'm able to use them. But in terms of any net effect, none.
Not really.
Yeah.
Okay, Veronica, and briefly, because we've heard of instances of odious debt. We've heard of the debt register not being made public and all that. So in terms of this finance bill, how does it address or fail to address the current debt sustainability challenges that are facing Kenya? Yeah.
I think in terms of the debt burden, I think we should focus more on the spending side. Because looking at the revenue numbers, apart from the COVID period, revenue has consistently grown over the years. Of course, there's a bit of slowdown this financial year, but revenues have continuously grown. And I think linking to the submission on trust, I think the question of accountability is where we have a problem. Right now, we have a public debt stock of around 11.4 trillion. So most of these, let's assume we have accumulated around 10 trillion of public debt since 2013. The question we usually ask is whether if we took stock of all development projects that we have done, if they would come to that 10 trillion that we have borrowed. Today I saw a new bond issuance of around 50 billion by the CBK. And they are saying the purpose for that bond is budgetary support.
Okay.
Budgetary support means we are not borrowing for a very specific program or project, yet the PFM Act says we can only borrow for development spending. So I think the missing link is in terms of investing our public debt in productive sectors that then stimulate the economy, and also the lack of transparency, because there are instances where We've been told we've borrowed, but the money didn't even come into the country. Of course, it has been explained it was used to pay other debt, but then our constitution says every revenue of the government must go to the consolidated fund. So the broader questions around transparency in terms of how we use our debt and even the borrowing terms, because most of the time we don't even get to see these borrowing agreements. And I think a good example is usually the SGR. Yeah. To date, I think we were given the funding agreement, but we were also looking for the contract that was signed between the implementer and the government. And so also in terms of accountability, we have borrowed, yes. Where do we invest? Are we investing in the right sectors? Okay. And in the last financial year, we spent close to 50% of the new debt we acquired on recurrent spending. So recurrent spending does not stimulate the economy. So I think the broader question is around the accountability and transparency around both debt acquisition and its utilization.
Okay, Alexander, as you come in and perhaps add in on what has been said, let's focus on the low-income households as we finalize. Have they been burdened disproportionately with this finance bill and some of the proposals in the bill? In what manner? Yeah.
That's a very good question. One of the provisions that we have under Clause 37 of the bill proposes to move inputs for production of pharmaceutical products from zero-rated to tax to VAT exempt. This has the possible net effect of increasing the cost of medicine within our health system. And my concern is patients that are suffering from chronic illnesses, diabetes, cancer, hypertension, and so on, that require medication over a lifetime. It means this medication will go higher for them. It will push some of them into deeper poverty. Some of them might even drop from their medication, and then mortality rates will go up. And this is coupled with an increase in excise on packaging material from 25% to 35%. This packaging material will also affect the price of medicine. So this will affect greatly that particular segment of society that is vulnerable. When you look at also the budget estimates, if you are affecting school feeding program, for instance, and the very vulnerable communities that have issues with famine are the ones that benefit from this, then you are again affecting that very vulnerable segment of the society. So when you look at the way the budget is done and the finance bill, those particular provisions that I have cited, then we are going to push some people into deeper poverty. This is coupled with what Veronica had said. The converse of this, we are seeing a lot of expenditure on administrative costs by increasing the number of state departments and the parks that go to those offices. So that is going to be a serious challenge. And that is why in the coming days we are conducting a governance diagnostics for Kenya, which is a shadow report to the IMF one that is going to be conducted starting next week. Okay. And what we want to do is to ensure that we look at how our PFM cycle is affecting the vulnerable in our societies.
Interesting. You know what they say, time is money. Unfortunately, we're done of time, but thank you for making time. Just highlighting some of these controversial issues that will be canvassed perhaps during the budget presentation by the Treasury CS on Thursday, and even as we move from a finance bill to a finance act. So much to talk about, so little time, but we definitely appreciate your input right here on KTN Prime. Allow me to just give you the names of my guests. Robert Minor, an Associate Director Tax at Ernst & Young. We appreciate your input. Veronica Ndegwa, who's a Senior Research Analyst at the Institute of Public Finance, IPF, and Alexander Rithi, who is the Head of Programs at the Institute for Social Accountability. Well, they drank tea as they spilt the tea on the finance bill, and that's how we wrap up tonight's edition of KTN Prime. Thank you so much for watching, and trust KTN to keep you updated in the run-up to the budget presentation on Thursday. Good evening and good night. My name is Jesse Rogers.